Hello, this is Dan at Sonicstate, and today I will be looking at Regroover Pro. Regroover is a tool for unmixing audio. It basically analyzes an audio clip and splits it into different layers, separating the instruments or main audio elements contained in the clip. On top of this, the Pro version adds a sample editor, so you can build up your own sample kits. Regroover automatically generates 4 layers, but you can increase the number of layers with the layer slider up to a maximum of 6. By default, Regroover also calculates your clip's BPM and syncs it to the session's BPM. This is a great feature that can speed up your workflow, but stretching the audio can also degrade the sound quality, so I am going to turn sync off to get a more accurate idea about Regroover's unmixing capabilities. Regroover is optimized to work with percussive sounds, so I am going to start with some percussion clips. Each layer has its own mixing controls, including mute, solo, pan, volume, mono, and output channel, as well as an EQ on the right, which shows the EQ for the currently selected layer. This allows us to remix and change the balance of the original clip to our taste. Splitting the audio into different layers is Regroover's main functionality, so let's try a few more drum loops and check the results. So Regroover generally does a very good job identifying the different instruments and elements in the audio clips. However, if we are not completely satisfied with the output, we can try and change some parameters in the analysis box. We can increase the number of layers and we can experiment with the activity slider, choosing low for slow changing material and high for busy arrangements. Another option to rearrange the layers would be to manually move parts between layers with the annotation tool. If I load one of the previous drum loops, you might notice that the snare body and the snare reverb tail are in 2 different layers. But let's say we want to reshape the layers produced by Regroover, and we want to merge the 2 layers into one, so that we end up with the snare in one place. To this end, first I lock the other layers, so that they don't get involved in the process. Then I select one of the snare layers with the annotation tool and click split. Sometimes you might just want to move small parts from one layer to another, like some transients, for example. In this case, there are a few small bass kick transients on the snare layer. You can use the audition mode shortcut, Ctrl-Shift-Click, to identify the audio we want to select. Ideally, it would be helpful to also have a snap to grid or snap to transient feature, but it is not available at the moment. So I am going to select the bass kick transients with the annotation tool. I also must remember to unlock just the bass kick layer, but keep the hi-hat layer locked. So as you can hear, there is now a pretty good separation between snare, kick and hi-hat. I've also found that Regroover works quite well on some single drum shots by separating the main frequency components. Of course, we can also try different types of non-percussive sounds that might provide some interesting results. Let's have a quick listen to a few other samples. As you can hear, it is more difficult to separate the elements of non-percussive sounds. However, this approach can provide unexpected and interesting results, as it uncovers layers of the sound that previously were not accessible. This way, Regroover becomes a powerful sound design tool. As a quick example, I have created my own tambourine sound from a countryside recording of birds. You could even load commercial tracks and try to isolate some samples, or use some of its parts for mashups and the like. Also, analyzing commercial tracks this way might offer some useful insights into the frequency distribution of commercial mixes. Once we have the layers the way we like, there are different things we can do with them. We can export each layer as an audio file, or another option is to trigger each layer with a MIDI note message. By the way, you can change the MIDI triggering mode in the Preferences menu. You can also trigger just part of the layers by moving the green markers to select the desired portion. And you can align the markers from all the layers by using the Shift-Click modifier shortcut while dragging a marker. Another great feature of Regroover is the expansion kit and the editor, where you can create your own sample kits from the layers and also import samples from your hard drive, then trigger them via MIDI. To start building your own kit, double-click on a layer to select an area, and then Control-click and drag to one of the expansion kit paths. once you have chosen a few samples, you might want to load a different audio clip and then drag more bits to the expansion kit, and so on. So you end up with a kit made up of parts of different samples. As you can see, each pad is triggered by a MIDI note. You can edit the expansion kit paths by opening the editor. In the editor, you can control several parameters for each pad, including solo, mute, mono, volume, and pan. There are also a volume envelope and a waveform display editor, where you can define loop points and reverse the sound. Each pad can also be routed to a different channel in your DAW. You can have as many as 16 outs from Regroover. I think this is a great feature of Regroover that opens up many possibilities for processing and mixing purposes, as you can treat each sound with a completely different effects chain. The great thing about multi-output instruments is that you are still working in the same track with one MIDI editor window that holds all the MIDI events together, but at the same time, each sound can be processed separately. The channel routing can also be useful to set up sidechain processing of another audio track. So once you have created your own expansion kits, you can then regroove and rearrange your clips in new ways and get creative by programming your MIDI tracks or recording live using a MIDI controller. So here is a couple of examples of two kits that I have built from different loops. The first one is a drum kit that I have created from two different drum loops. These are the original loops. And this is the expansion kit that includes the usual bass kick and snare and hi-hat. And on the last row, I have reversed 4 of the clips to add some variation and movement to the track. The second kit is built from these two samples of a guitar and a vocal recording. And what I have done is to take short parts of both to create a rhythmic instrument. It was particularly quick and easy to get the transients from one of the guitar layers, and I think they make a great percussive instrument. Of course, I could have loaded third-party samples from my hard drive onto the empty pads. You can load them by clicking this icon. By the way, one thing I did miss was some sort of sound preview feature on the browsing window. Once you have built your own sample kit, you can either export the pads as audio files or save the kit as a Regroover project. Also, Accusonus has included several free expansion kits with the Pro version. Let's have a quick listen. Before ending the review, it is worth mentioning the importance of planning your session's BPM and sample rate. This is because Regroover uses your current session's sample rate to analyze the audio, and any changes to this means that Regroover will analyze the clip again and treat it as a new project, and thus clear its current settings. You must also match your project sampling rate when rendering your arrangement to a stereo file. Also, if you want to open a new Regroover project or extension pack, your DAW session needs to match Regroover's project sample rate. For example, Accusonus expansion pack are at 48 kHz, so your DAW session will need to be the same. Similarly, every time you press split to analyze the audio or change Regroover's BPN when sync is enabled, this is treated as a new Regroover project, so you will lose current settings like the pan and EQ, etc. The pad editor, however, will keep the samples in place so that you can build your sample kits from different sources. Perhaps a temporary solution might be to lock or freeze your Regroover tracks with your DAW freeze function. So overall, this is a fantastic and innovative plugin. It opens up so many creative possibilities, not just for beat programming, but also for sound design. It really does something unique, and on top of this, it is very easy to use. It certainly works better on percussive sounds, and it is fair to say that often you will get the best results by splitting the layers manually with the annotation tool. There are just a few minor things that could be improved from my point of view. For example, the interface could be clearer in places, like the BPM box or the layers MIDI notes, which are very difficult to see. And it would be great if we could customize the MIDI mappings for paths and layers. This would allow, among other things, the layering of sounds by mapping several paths to the same MIDI message, for example. Another thing I would find very useful would be the ability to change the pitch of the samples in the editor and to label them for easy identification. As I mentioned earlier, it would be nice to have a snap to grid and zoom in functions in the layer section. Some people might also find useful to expand the restriction beyond the 30 seconds limit and also to include support for MP3 files. I did have some crashes while making the review, and this could indicate stability issues with Regroover, but then again it could be down to my own system configuration. However, all these are really small things that could easily be sorted in future updates. At the end of the day, the core functionality and the creative potential is already there, and it is quite amazing. Regroover Pro is available as VST audio unit and AAX for Mac and PC, and it costs $199. It supports all the major DAWs except Cubase 32-bit and Bitwig Studio. Okay, this is all from me. Thank you for watching and see you next time.